Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I take a look at the last 5 new to me board games, I review them and I rank them in order of preference. Now before I get started on these 5 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 5 I have Honeybuzz, which is a medium lightweight Euro, probably venturing more on the light side of that. This one is a worker placement game with a very simple kind of twist where when you go to a worker placement spot, the next player can go to that spot, but they have to pay one extra worker than the player before them. So it gets more and more expensive if you want to do these same actions. And there's a degree of tile placement, which I definitely think is the strongest part of the game, as you are building up this kind of network of these honeycombs. And whenever you complete a ring of these honeycombs, then you'll get all of the actions depicted on those particular tiles. And these actions are all pretty simple in their own right, but it is quite nice when you can completely pack a ring of these honeycombs with actions, so you get to do lots of actions in a single turn. And these actions are things such as fulfilling orders, moving a bee around to collect different kind of honey spawning points, getting new workers, and so on. So again, lots of simple mechanisms harmonized with this honeycomb mechanism. Now again, I really do like that foreplanning of that tile placement, and the idea that you can very efficiently place things to keep spawning honey with single actions rather than spreading them thin. So you are rewarded for, again, planning. But unfortunately, I thought that the rest of the game, the actual main actions that are going on in the board in terms of that worker placement, were very subtle, very lackluster, I thought, a bit predictable and a bit bland. So I would have liked to have seen a more advanced game built around that tile placement part of the game. I just felt like the rest of the game felt a little bit weak and just felt a little bit too introductory to where I'm at now in terms of what I want from board games. But I can see why people would like this. I'm not sure if the shelf life would really be there. I know there are 2 different weights of which you can play the game, like the basic mode or the advanced mode, and the advanced mode doesn't really seem any more complex than the base one. So I think almost anybody who comes through the gaming space is going to have quite a short time playing and enjoying Honeybuzz, despite having some cool things going on and some promising ideas with a lot of potential. I just don't think this is the game to showcase some of those cooler mechanisms in this game. So that is Honeybuzz at number 5. At number 4, I have 13 Beavers. So on paper, this is a game that sounds terrible, but in practice, it is a lot of fun. Way more fun than it has any right to be. And this is simply a game of play your cards right, if you're familiar with that game show, where you are simply trying to guess if the next card will be higher or lower than the previous card. But this one is not only that degree of push your luck, it also has kind of a touch of a game like Can't Stop, where you can keep on pushing your luck doing that game, or kind of bank where you're at and stop somewhere on this river by building your dam. Production-wise, the game looks really charming. You have these nice little beavers, little dams they slot into. The board is nice and bright, so it has definitely a wide family appeal to it. And you know what, that kind of visceral choice of higher or lower, I don't think that really gets too boring. Yes, the decision space isn't really there. It's you know, if you draw a low card, you're probably going to guess higher. If you draw a high card, you're probably going to guess lower. But there are a few little twists in this game that just take it to that next step. Like for example, there is this kind of temptation cave, where when you get to this particular spot on the board, you can choose to gamble and guess exactly the value on the next card in order to go pretty much right to the end of the track. But if you fail, you go right back to the beginning. And we've also got spots that you can't stop in, and you can even stop and do a bit of fishing and get some little bonuses and stuff. And there's a slight catch-up mechanism as well with this wolf cave. This is, again, a game that anybody could play. You can play this with young children, but you could still have a good time racing and pushing your luck with adults as well. I think it tailors up to 6 players. So this is one of those games that just seems to have found its place in my collection. I can always see me playing this quite regularly, actually, because it is so quick, and there's going to be like next to no effort in teaching this to anybody, which I think there's always room for games like that, where you can literally whip it out in almost any scenario and have a good time. So that is 13 Beavers at number 4. At number 3, I have House of Cats. So we're continuing with the animal themed games. This one is a roll and write style game, as you are rolling, I believe it's 3 dice or 4 dice per turn, and then you are choosing either the numbers on those dice or these cat or mouse symbols on them, and you're populating this little kind of blueprint of a building. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to create groups of the same number of that size. So you want, say, a group of 4 4s, a group of 3 3s, 2 2s, and so on. Whenever you do that, you're going to kind of ring post them or ring fence those numbers and create a new room. And then you'll also unlock an ability that can give you kind of mitigation tools going down the line, such as being able to write anything anywhere or moving a number from one place in the building to the next. Now, the game also comes with 4 different modes. So you've got like 4 different scenarios, ranging from very simple to slightly more advanced. Now, I've only played the simpler ones at the moment, so this one could definitely has potential to go up in my favour list. But I do like the way that the different scenarios use those mouse and cat symbols to different degrees. So, for example, some of them might say, if you put a mouse in your building, then you get to tick off these cheese markers that are on the kind of vertical or horizontal axes of that particular spot, which will unlock you more points. Some of them, these might let you go along a track. Some of them might multiply with each other, as in the cats and the mice, and so on. So a very simple system. I like the way that the game kind of encloses as it goes on, as your options are limited. And it does remind me very much, actually, with a game that I had in my collection for a long time that I've always spoken highly of, called Splitter. This one is, again, very similar to that in terms of creating those groups, but I think those little twists are just enough. And the fact that you can play this in 15 minutes maximum, I think is a great touch. So I'm going to play this quite a bit more. Is it going to stay in the collection forever? I'm not sure. We'll see what those more advanced maps have to offer. But it's a very pleasant experience, very breezy, and I like it. So that is the House of Cats at number 3. Okay, so let's go into the top 2 games now, and this is where my commendations will begin. And at number 2, I have Lacuna, which is a very strange abstract strategy game that's very distinct and unique to anything else out there on the market, at least to my awareness. So this game, you're going to have this huge mat, and at the start of the game, you are going to spread these little wooden tokens all over this map, kind of getting an even spread if you can. And then what you do in the game is that you are trying to draw a line between 2 of the same types of tokens and place your marker in between that kind of imaginary line. When you place that marker down, you're going to take the 2 tokens that you've just put in between into your scoring pile. I'm going to keep on doing that until each player has had 6 turns, and the pieces that you have remaining on the board, as in where you've placed your markers, they are going to basically absorb all of the remaining markers on the board. So, for example, if I had my player marker here and I had 3 tokens closer to my marker as they are as compared to my opponent, then those markers will come to me, or those pieces will come to me. So it really is a game of geometry, really. You can think ahead, and you can even directly, sometimes confrontationally, interact with your opponent, as you know that they have their marker really close to a bunch of pieces on one side of the board, and you might want to put your marker just a little bit closer to them and even take some more tokens that you knew that they wanted to have at the end. And the objective of the game is to have the majority in the majority of different types. So you want at least 4 types in 4 of the different types of token, because there are 7 of each. That's pretty much what it is. It's super quick. It's always a game of kind of hyper-analysing the board state. And I like that idea of being so alert and not missing any opportunities. My only concern with this game is, in fact, a couple of concerns. Number 1 is the replayability factor. I'm not sure if this is going to have the appeal years down the line. I think this might be a game that you'll experience and maybe get it out of your system once you've seen all the intricacies. But I do like that novelty factor of how different it is, and even if I don't play it so often, I probably want to keep this around because it's a fun game to show someone, and it's also a fun game to teach. The second reason that I think it might not work for a lot of people is that if you are particularly pedantic about distances and things. You know, if you're like a war gamer and you measure things to the millimeter, this one, you know, you might bounce off of it because sometimes you just have to use a sensible head and give the token to the person who you just think might be that little bit closer, because sometimes the margins are literally a fraction of a millimeter difference. You can do this kind of secondary way of distributing those tokens by going to the next closest marker, but more often than not that won't happen. But at the moment I'm really liking it. You know, a 2-player only game that plays in around 10 to 15 minutes, novel concepts and some good decisions. So that is Lacuna at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have KLASK. So it's rare that I talk about dexterity games on the channel because I don't play too many of them. But very fortunately, I had a friend who picked up a copy of KLASK, and we played the hell out of this one. By God, is this a fun dexterity game? It's somewhat like replicates like ice hockey or like football, that kind of style of dexterity game where it's a 2-player only game and you have this table with a boundary on it, and you're trying to get the ball into your opponent's kind of hole on their side of the table. But the way that you knock this ball back and forth is through the use of these magnets that you are holding under the table, and of course the one under the table is going to move your marker on top of the table in, you know, using that magnetic force to knock that ball back and forth. Now that in itself is fun, but what I loved about this game is those extra little decisions that made it interesting. So for example, in the middle of the table there are these 3 kind of micro magnets, and if you ever have 2 of those magnets touch your magnet, then you are going to lose the round essentially. So you have this very small area in which you can navigate around, but that area might change as you use that ball to hit those tiny magnets into your opponent's side, and that can even force them to be very restricted in how they can move. So there's different ways you can score. You know, are you going to put the ball in the net? Are you going to trap your opponent with those magnets? Or you can even make silly mistakes by making your magnet fall into your own goal, which does happen quite frequently. Lots of cool trick shots you can do is you can kind of use these magnets to whip the ball. It's just a really engaging, very addictive style of game that we just couldn't stop playing. So I'm blown away with how fun this game was. Again, is it a board game? Maybe not. Let's not be pedantic about that. Let's just say it might be a fun activity, but it's a brilliant game regardless. And I'd play this anytime, anywhere, because it is that much fun. So that is KLASK at number 1. So there we have it. That concludes the video. Definitely a wider range of games here. Very enjoyable ones actually. Maybe the only one I didn't quite enjoy was Honeybuzz, but the other ones were a lot of fun. But if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content too. Also be sure to go check out my BGG page for my new game THALAMUS to keep updated with any news. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.